I'd like to introduce you to Dr. David Deggs. He is the Senior Program Manager with GED Testing Services in Washington, D.C. He was most recently a professor of adult and lifelong learning at the University of Arkansas from prior to joining GED Testing Services. David has also served as Assistant State Director of Adult Education and GED Testing at the Louisiana Department of Education from 2003 to 2006. During that time, he saw the development of the Louisiana Adult Education Content Standards. David has consulted with community colleges across the country on the development of adult learning and supplemental education programs. Please welcome Dr. David Deggs.
Can you all hear me? Well, good morning, and thank you for having me today. I'm David Deggs with the GED Testing Service, and although I am assigned to our Washington, D.C. office, I do work remotely from either my home or the airport or wherever I happen to be that day. Spent a lot of time on the road in the last few weeks as we are implementing the new GED test, and I want to thank Jarrett for the invitation to be here today, and I appreciate his leadership and seeking the grant from NCTA to host this mini conference and for putting all this together. And I want to thank Jennifer, who has escaped the room, for her being here. And I want to let you know that you all have a tremendous leader in Jennifer Foster because of her work within the state of Illinois, but also her eminence at the national level. Jennifer is one of the key voices of adult education, and as a former assistant state director, you all need to know that she is very engaged in the dialogue about where adult learning fits within the state pipeline for education. And so I appreciate Jennifer's efforts and her leadership. And most of all, thank you all for being here, because I know this is the break time between the summer and the fall semester, and you've got a lot of things happening. Most importantly, you might be looking forward to a day off, but you want to come spend a day learning about the 2014 GED testing program. Having been an instructor, professor before, and also a staff member, I know that this downtime is very, very cherished. So thanks for coming today to hear about the new program. I'm going to try to fill in some of the questions that were raised during Jennifer's session and try to talk about how some of the 2014 programs and services will look on the ground in Illinois. And if I don't answer your question, or if I forget something as I'm going through the presentation, do not hesitate to let me know. Jarrett's told me that we were a little flexible on the agenda. I think we all come from the same school of thought that the most important thing is that we all leave here with our questions answered. And so just as you did in Jennifer's session, feel free to stop me and ask questions. So as we look at the presentation today, yeah, I've given this presentation several times. You think I should know the slides in order by now. I want to talk about what we've done with computer-based testing. Jennifer gave you all a great update of where the state of Illinois was. I would say that Illinois as a state is moving along very nicely. We have a path to being ready for 2014 that began with the 4 pilot sites nearly a year ago. We've done some wonderful work with Jennifer and Leanne to ensure that we have access and coverage. And so Illinois is well on its way, and we still have a few things we need to iron out, but I will let you know that Leanne in Jennifer's office and Patty Vonderhart on my team at the testing service, they are in constant conversation about where centers are. So we will continue that dialogue, and we will make sure that the test is available to your adult learners come January 2nd, 2014. I want to spend most of the time talking about the 2014 GED program. And although a lot of you are saying the GED test, what I'm going to share with you in a few moments is that this is growing beyond a test. And there's a lot of supplemental services and programs that we are implementing that are very learner-centric, that are being designed to respond to the needs of your adult learners. And I think what you'll find is that a lot of what we're rolling out in the next few months into 2014 are things that will help you all do your jobs better, whether you be an instructor, whether you be an examiner, whether you be a college admissions representative, whether you be a business industry leader or employer making employment decisions. There's a lot of things that have been built into the design of the 2014 GED program that are meant to illuminate that path for the adult learner. And then finally, I want to talk to you about marching with us as we move forward and realizing the vision of this great new system of adult learning that goes back to what Molly Broad, ACE president, envisioned in 2008. And Jennifer referenced Molly's vision in her presentation. So, talking about the gap for adult learners, one of the things that we're beginning to see, and all of us as educators, when we talk with our colleagues, whether they be more at the credit-bearing side of the institution, whether they be business industry leaders, whether they be just with students who've left our programs and tried to find their way in the world, we know that there's a gap out there. And we know that there has to be a higher level of skills that are attained and measured for employment purposes or for entry into post-secondary education. We also know that the number of lower skill jobs are beginning to diminish, and what's happening is we're moving to that whole knowledge-based economy where technology is infused into very many basic job functions, and we are seeing a rise in the number of middle skill jobs that are available out there. At the GED Testing Service, we have the strong belief that our adult learners that are participants in your adult education programs can be competitive for those jobs. But to get them there, we've got to raise the bar on the GED test. And Jennifer gave you all a great historical perspective of how the GED test has evolved over the last 70 years. A lot of those changes have been in response to changes in society, in the nature of work, and the nature of job prospects. So for those 4 million middle school jobs that exist out there, and being in the Chicago area, we know that many employers offer those middle school jobs. We can help adult learners be ready for those jobs by having a new test that measures higher level skills, that denotes readiness for career and or college placement, that can help them earn those higher level credentials that get to those jobs. Our most important responsibility as we redesign the GED testing program has been to ensure that the test and subsequently your state credential remain a meaningful credential for adults, for employers, for colleges, and the like. Many of you may not be aware that the 2002 series GED test is based upon standards of the late 90s. And if you think about what's happened in high schools and how there's been so much emphasis on redesigning high schools and looking at high school curricula and rethinking career pathways and college readiness, and these are things that we've begun to discuss over the last decade as educators. And having been in a state government position similar to Jennifer, these are dialogues we were having in the middle of the 2000s when I was in Louisiana. Our adult learners deserve the same opportunity to be on equal footing with someone who exits high school today. And our current GED test, although it has served us well, it's been in circulation for 12 years. So we've got to move forward with a new test, but we've got to move forward with a better test to help adult learners realize their dream. So here's a slide for you that kind of gives you a new paradigm of how the GED testing program or the GED program is moving forward in 2014. And I'm going to talk about more of these areas later, but we're thinking about 3 key functions of the adult learner. Certainly the preparation that comes through the adult education program, whether it be based here at the college, whether it be a school district, or maybe even a literacy provider, community-based organization. We know there are a number of entities that are funded and not funded by states that play a critical role in preparation of adult learners and provide those key instructional activities. So definitely the preparation, and you'll see that there's some things that I'll talk about with 2014 that support the preparation component. One thing we can't take away is the role of a good educator, but we have some things to help the educators do their jobs with a little bit more ease, if you will. Definitely the performance, and that's the actual GED test. Many of you know the design and structure of the 2002 test. Some of you may have been around and administered the 88 series test. So I want to talk about the 2014 test, and Jennifer gave you all a great overview of how that test will look and how it is reflective of the new standards that we see aligned to Common Core or other prevailing state standards. And most importantly, it's aligned to the career and college readiness standards for adult education. And then the thing that I think is really neat is thinking about this whole evolution of adult learning is the progression onto the next chapter in life. I was so elated to hear about the college's scholarship, the Jumpstart Scholarship that you all give to graduates. If they earn the GED credential, they get a $500 scholarship. What a great incentive to help GED graduates be able to access post-secondary education, be able to make those transitions onto the next chapter of their lives. And I know that a lot of community colleges across the country have very similar programs. And so we want to do more to support those progressions because honestly, folks, we don't do enough to get adult learners to move on to the next chapter in their life, and that's enrollment at your institution or enrollment in a job training program or some other type of program. So we've got to do a lot to kind of notch up our performance as a group of adult educators. So we, it was nice to hear Jennifer talk about the technology skills and how technology skills and competencies have been embedded into the Illinois curriculum frameworks. And I know that Jennifer's team, she has a great group of professional development coordinators that work across the state, how they've been out talking about the new test. And, a lot of people, came to us initially with some reservations about the ability of adult learners to perform on computer, or the whole idea of integrating technology into the instructional process. What I will tell you is that we have no other option. Adults cannot apply for a job with one of the 10 major employers in the U.S. unless they start with an online or computer-based application to do so. You cannot complete the basic functions of a job pretty much anywhere unless you have some technology skill, because the use of technology is integrated into very basic work today. I like to give the example of with this job, I travel quite a bit, and I was actually at DFW yesterday, flying up from Dallas to Chicago, and there were the ramp crew loading the luggage, but what's mounted on the base of the dashboard of their truck? A computer screen. So they are keying in information into a computer screen that's mounted onto the dashboard of the truck to make sure that they load the right bags onto the right plane at the right time so that everything goes as it's supposed to. So not only does it take a strong back to do that work, it also takes a level of proficiency with technology. So we like to think that the new testing program will definitely help support the integration of digital literacy into adult education. And we know that many teachers have been using technology to supplement or as a means of teaching, and we hope that you all can continue to look for innovative ways to do so as we roll into 2014. So where are we with computer-based testing? When I came to the GED Testing Service, I left my professorship at the University of Arkansas to be part of this great adventure that Jennifer and her colleagues across the country have been watching this unfold and been supportive of our endeavors. We had yet to deliver the first test, and I left the University of Arkansas in fall of 2011. Since then, we have gotten most of our states up to computer-based testing, and I'll show you that information in just a minute. But this year alone, we've given 145,900 plus test modules. And the reason why I'm saying plus is that I pulled this report on Monday, and I know that probably a few thousand modules were given this week alone across the United States, our Canadian provinces, insular areas, as well as our international testing sites. We have 1,150 plus computer-based testing centers. I say plus because I got emails this morning that 5 new centers were authorized just this morning. So the network is growing. The takeaway here is your center one of these? And if not, we need to work with you to get you up and running before the end of the year, because we want to make sure your students have access to the test. So here are we with computer-based testing, and one of the great joys in this job has been to watch the map turn from gray to blue over the last 18, 19, nearly 20 months. And there are some states that are not yet live with computer-based testing. Unfortunately, there are a few that have opted to go a different route, and we respect that decision. But you can see that there are, most states are blue, meaning they are live with computer-based testing, And you'll see that some states are in yellow, meaning that they're actually given the GED test on computer in a correctional facility. Jennifer, Leanne, Patty, and myself have been in contact with your colleagues at the Illinois Department of Corrections. We're working on an implementation schedule for them. So the takeaway here is that if we can launch computer-based testing in some state departments of corrections, which we have done, we can get your campus up and running. It's also important to note that we have computer-based testing live in 5 Canadian provinces. We have testing with DuPage, the Defense Administration program, international testing for citizens across the country, across the world, who want to take the GED test because very often they want to come to a U.S. college or university. And then we have the Federal Bureau of Prisons, which I will be with them again next week as we launch their second site. And then we have our insular areas that we work with across the country. And I can tell you that some of our colleagues in those insular areas, they don't have the support or the technology infrastructure that we have here at this campus or that most of us have on the colleges or university campuses that we've worked in before. But they've been able to make this happen. And if we can deliver a test and meet the needs of adult learners in American Samoa or Guam, we can meet the needs of your students in this area. So this is a truly global program serving adults worldwide. So what about computer-based testing and what's been happening? What are the results telling us? I was here at College of DuPage, the first site that actually delivered the first GED test on computer in Illinois, November of last year, October 29th. I remember being here, but the dates get fuzzy. But October 29th, thank you for keeping me honest. Pictures. He was on campus. So, but you know, one of the things that I do remember from being on campus was talking with a test taker who was taking her last test on computer. She'd taken other test versions on paper. And I remember talking to her after the test administration. She had passed and she was about to credential. And this was an adult who had had a great job. I think she'd been at the same job probably 20, 25 years or better. And she was trying to earn the credential for that sense of self-pride and self-achievement, which is probably what drives the majority of our test takers. But I think she was also seeking, a promotion. And I asked her, I said, you took your first 4 tests on paper, you're taking the last test on computer, can you tell me about the 2? And she said, well, I prefer the computer. And I said, even though it cost you a little bit more, she said, you get what you pay for. And the fact that I'm walking out of here today, going to work this afternoon, knowing that I passed that last test and I will be a high school graduate, means so much to me that if I could have taken all tests on computer, I would have done it. So I'm recounting her story, but I would urge you to talk to your test takers about their experience on computer. One thing that we did find as we've watched the data, and this data is through June of this year, is that 88% of students who take the test on computer are passing as opposed to 71% on paper. And one of the things that we attribute that to is that it's a much easier platform to navigate for students, and that everything is on screen. They have the question, they have the answer, they click at the answer, and they've got their scratch paper in the form of a dry erase board that they use. And so they're not trying to manage multiple pieces of paper. You don't have stray marks on the Scantron page. You don't have all these possible errors that could occur. So we do see a higher passage rate. One thing that we see, and I think we attribute this to the instant score reports, is that if they do fail a test module, 59% are more likely to come back and retest. And I think what's occurring is that because you know how they're doing, you're able to intervene a lot more quickly and say, you were close, let's get you in to talk to a teacher, let's discuss remediation options. Don't let them go out the door without having a game plan for going forth. Because we know that one of the things that we have to work with adult learners on is overcoming the sense of fear and very often a sense of doubt. And we know that many of you as adult educators, that you may be a teacher and instructor by title, but you're also a mentor, advisor, coach, and related roles. And so I think that what we're doing with a more learner-centric program is we're able to help students have those discussions and discuss what they need to do as next steps, rather than seeing a failing score and then sitting at home deciding what to do about it for a few weeks or a few months, or in some cases a few years. And then one thing that we're also observing is that test takers are completing the battery a lot quicker because it is a more conducive environment to testing. A lot of people have asked us, well, you know, you're just testing 20-something-year-olds who understand and who've used the computer. Maybe they grew up on using a computer. I'll tell you that demographically our test takers are similar to our paper-based test takers, and that we're testing test takers of all age groups, all ethnicities, races, and gender. So we are, it's not just 20-something-year-olds that we're testing. We're seeing this performance, you know, with adults in their 40s, 50s, and beyond. So here's some quotes from test takers. I'm not going to take the time to read these, but one of the things that we actually get when we have been out to visit with testing centers and see when we go live is we've gotten some feedback from test takers about the experience. And I think a lot of you are, if you are a GED examiner and you're beginning to implement computer-based testing, you're starting to realize the benefit of this system in that you're not having to catalog books, you're not having to check books, you're not having to assign test forms, you're not having to do all this prep work because it's all managed through the computer system. And so it makes your life a whole lot easier. You know, Jarrett has seen an increase in the demand for computer and less of a demand for paper. And so I think from both the perspective of the candidate and the examiner, it's a better system and it's preferred. And definitely offer paper until the end of 2013 because the tests will be available in that format. But what we've seen at College of DuPage is we've seen it start very small and expand as more and more students have opted for this format. And so if your college has not begun the process of implementing computer-based testing, or if you've just started, I encourage you to kind of model that where as you kind of ramp up computer-based testing, you're doing at the same time that you're sunsetting paper-based testing. You know, we could not afford to have a hard stop and a jumpy start to the beginning. That's what this whole period of transition has been designed to do. So I want to talk about the 2014 program and the things that the GED Testing Service has begun to roll out and will continue to roll out as we get closer to 2014. And one of the things that we're saying buyer beware is because we understand that there are other tests out there that are claiming to do what the GED test has done historically since 1942. And so I want to talk about some of the things that set the GED testing program or the 2014 program apart from the others because it is so much more than just a test. So here are the things I'm going to spend some time talking about. And I do want to mention that in your folder there's actually some information on some different parts of what I'm going to discuss here in just a few moments. So if you have your folders, you might want to pull out some of the tear sheets as I talk about these different areas. I do want to talk about the 2014 GED test. Jennifer gave you all a great overview. I want to tell you about some of the things that have been happening with the development of it because we are very close to the go live date and there are actual test forms that have been developed and that have been normed. So I want to talk to you about that. I want to talk to you about how the practice test is changing. Many of you all rely upon the OPT in today's world to predict student performance on the actual test. We're changing the way we're going to work with that in the future, and I think you all will be pleased with some of the changes that are coming. The student test taker experience is primarily driven by our new MyGED portal that we will be rolling out later this fall, but I have some things to share with you as kind of a preview of that. Our new score report that will definitely give you a lot more information to help students make some informed decisions. And then finally, the GED analytics system, not to replace what you're going to get through Turnkey and Jeff, but we do have some neat reporting tools coming that will help provide some more information to your centers. So, the development of the 2014 GED test. If you all have visited our website, gedtestingservice.com, you'll see that there have been a number of updates about the development of the test. We've had assessment guides for educators posted out there. We've had item samplers. We've had all kinds of information given to inform the instructors. And that's meant to supplement the work that's being done by your state office because I know there's been some professional development institutes that have been hosted across the state. If you haven't visited our website, please do so and visit very often because we're always making changes. We actually began by developing the items for the 2014 test about a year ago, and we actually went into field testing those items to make sure that they were actually valid, that they were measuring the content that they were intended to measure. We actually have taken those items since then, and we've put together the operational tests, the test forms, if you will, as you know them today, have been developed for both the actual GED test and GED Ready. So those have been developed and put together. We actually have spent some time, in fact, a year ago at our national conference, we began the dialogue about our score report. We actually have done some focus groups across the country with adult educators and adult learners about what the score report might need to look like, because it's linked to and it's juxtaposed, if you will, very nicely into the design of the GED test. We actually went out earlier this summer, recruited recent high school graduates to take the operational forms of both the GED test and GED Ready so that we can norm the test. Those of you who've been adult educators and examiners for some time probably know that we have normed our test using high school graduates to determine our cut score for performance. That way that we can say that this is the score that an adult learner needs to make in order to be on par with a high school graduate. And so that's a very important activity that ensures that we can say to your state department, your Illinois Community College Board, that this test represents high school equivalency. And so that's an important psychometric activity that's been undertaken this summer. We've continued to include a stakeholder advisory panel. One of the things that you'll notice on some of the information is that we have consulted with many groups on the development of the test: K-12 teachers, college professors, adult educators, ABE, GED level, military, business, industry, government, you name it. The GED test although it's used for high school equivalency, there are a number of stakeholders that have some input into what are those basic foundational skills, as well as what denotes career and college readiness. So we've engaged a conversation with those. And we've also have administered the actual norming of the test. That's just recently been completed, and so we're going into the data review process, and that's something that's being done by our test development team at the testing service. So we do have some things that are coming up for the rest of 2013. One is our GED Ready, which is our new practice test, will actually be available on our website in September. That can be accessed and previewed by adult educators and adult learners. And this is going to be the first opportunity that you all will get to see, although you've seen item samplers, and I encourage you to still continue to work with the item samplers to understand what skills are being measured. But the actual GED Ready will go live on our website in a preview mode in September so that you can get a feel of what an actual test administration would look like. It'll be available for purchase in November, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. We also will be having some webinars on how to teach students and how to prepare them to prepare the constructed response items. And the question was raised earlier about the writing test. The writing test as we know it is going to change in 2014 because writing is a key activity it's not limited simply to English language arts. It transcends the disciplines, if you will. We will have extended response items in reasoning through language arts, which is the combination of the reading and writing test as we know it today. And then we will have an extended response item in the social studies test, and we'll have a short answer item in the science test. And so you'll see those writing skills be applicable in these other disciplines, and you'll see that test takers will have a source text, and they'll have a question that they'll have to respond to using evidence and drawing conclusions from the source text. We have webinars coming up that will actually give more instruction or professional guidance or professional development for adult educators as to how to teach students so they can produce those responses that would be required on the test. The important thing here, and coming from the perspective of a college faculty member having taught developmental education, is that this is a key skill that is applicable in college that's also applicable on the job. And so today's world on the 2002 series, they're kind of given an essay prompt and it's very subjective, and as long as they use standard grammar and English and what have you, they typically do okay because it's just their own response. But actually working with source text is a skill that employers will expect. It's a skill that college faculty will expect. And so it's not that we're not teaching writing, it's just that we're teaching writing for a different purpose, and we're teaching them to write in a way that would be expected when they transition from our programs. And then finally, we will continue to do staff development presentations, webinars, and some other recorded sessions, including yours truly being here today. That's part of our outreach efforts as we prepare for 2014. So, GED Ready. GED Ready is the new name of the practice test. Right now, you all probably know it by the OPT, the official practice test, and it's distributed by one publisher primarily. That test that you've used for the duration of the 2002 series is actually owned by GED Testing Service, but it's just distributed by another publisher. What we decided to do in 2014 was actually open up GED Ready to the adult ed market. And if you go to our website, gedtestingservice.com, and if you click on Publishing Partners, you'll see what they will offer as far as curriculum, software, and related materials that support the 2014 GED test. You'll also see whether or not they plan to offer GED Ready. And so some components about GED Ready are that it does provide feedback for students on what their performance is that predicts how they actually do on the actual GED test. It will run off of software that will give the students the same look and feel of the actual GED test. And so how the items will appear on screen, how they will work with the technology-enhanced items, how the extended response would look, how the short answer would look, all of that will have the same look and feel of the actual GED test. A lot of people have used the tutorial to help students prepare for that. Here's another method to get them prepared for the actual test and maybe mitigate some of that test anxiety. There will actually be, some feedback for test takers about their performance, and if you choose to buy GED Ready from one of our publishing partners, they can align the results of GED Ready to their curriculum. And so when a student takes GED Ready in your center, and they come in and you begin to discuss their results, and you look for areas that you might need to offer some additional instruction or maybe extended remediation depending upon their performance, it will actually tell you what resources are available from the publishers that you may have purchased that support the areas your students need help with. So rather than having to score a test, get a score, then go back and do an item analysis yourself by hand and say, oh, they're having a problem with vocabulary, so I've got to find a resource to help teach vocabulary, reinforce vocabulary. You will know that by the key that the publishers can give you about what skill sets they need to address. So again, it's going to take a lot of time. It's going to save the teachers a lot of time in having to do this work to support remediation. And most importantly, GED Ready has been developed by our test development team, our test creators, so you know that it's the same, the test items are developed for the same purposes as the actual GED test. Yes?
Different publishers that will be able to, when they're going out to programs, they will say, our stuff is aligned with GED Ready.
Yes.
And that's how we know that we've been kind of aligned up.
Yes. The question was, so the publishers will be able to tell you the alignment of their materials to GED Ready when they come to talk to your center and your staff, and the answer is yes. But I think the more important question, or equally important, is by being aligned to GED Ready, it's also aligned to the 2014 GED test. We released the assessment guide for educators about a year and a half ago. When we released that, we also had released a guide for the publishers as well. And so we have been working with the publishers for nearly 2 years now on the development of their materials aligned to the 2014 test. And so the actual operational test, the actual GED test, and GED Ready, all the publishers that have agreed to work with us have had that information so they can have these materials and products developed for you all.
The question I'm going to get is, who are those
Who are those publishers? They're actually on our website. If we have a live internet connection, I can get out to it and show you the list at the end of the session. Just somebody remind me. Okay? Yes, sir.
Cost.
The cost of GED Ready, thank you. We are recommending, and because we develop it, we distribute it, but we do not set the final price, we're recommending $4 per module. And with there being 4 modules in 2014, it would be $16 for the entire battery for GED Ready. Now that's our recommended price. What we do know is that some publishers, if depending upon what they're selling you and depending upon the size of the purchase, they may discount that. So the publishers would determine the final price.
Could it be higher than 4? Or?
It cannot be higher than 4, but it could fluctuate.
Because the price, obviously, for our folks taking the test
Yes.
has gone up. So
Yeah. We're recommending we're recommending $4, but it cannot be any higher than 4. So the publishers will set the final price. Some publishers may discount it depending upon what else you buy from them. So that's a question for your publishing rep. Yes.
I would also add that as a state, we're looking at how can we look at a statewide license to try to help to absorb. So that's something that we've talked about in our office as well. So just let you know that.
And so a lot of options on the table, and I think more will be revealed the closer you all get to 2014 and make some budget decisions.
And that, I guess that goes in the same question. When the more that be revealed, we know that we're going to have this new exam and a new way to do it. And the standards are higher, but we're really not necessarily going to know what we have to prepare. Like this base level, I get great new exam online, higher stakes though, but we don't get the information to help our students pass it.
Actually, if you go to our website, GEDTestingService.com, if you go under Educators and go to our Assessment Guide for Educators, if you go to, we have a document called our Comparison Guide. Have you seen it?
Yeah.
Okay. That is the comparison guide between the 02 series and the 2014 series test. And for many adult educators, you're aware of what the content was in 2002. You're aware of the content in 2014. So that is meant to be the initial guide to help teachers plan their curriculum and their resources. What I will tell you is that although there are technology enhanced items on the test, the majority of the items will still be objective, multiple choice items, and the new technology items will also be implemented as well. So while I understand and I can relate to your concern about what this all will look like, I think the preview of GED Ready that will go live next month, that you can actually get on and access as a teacher, along with the item samplers, will help you to begin to take those new performance standards and see how those are being measured according to the test items that are being produced. Thank you. So this is the information about GED Ready, and you all have a handout in your folder. And so the free version will be available from our website in September. It should be coming out in the next few weeks. And then the publishers will be able to sell it to you beginning in November. So again, more information about the new test as we get closer, and a great preview to what the actual operational test will look like. We're very, very happy. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, real quick question. Now, the practice test, is that something that a tester could purchase and come into a testing site, take the practice, you know what I mean, just to kind of be in the environment and see exactly what they could expect?
It could go both ways. The question was, could a test taker purchase a practice test or come into a site? We will make the practice test available on our website because half of our test takers never enter adult education. Now, we advocate that they go to adult education. We know that in many cases they're more likely to be much more successful should they attend adult education. But if they choose to study at home, which many of them do, they could take GED Ready at home through our GED marketplace. But if they come into an adult ed center, if you all were to provide it, you all could proctor the test in a manner to emulate standard testing conditions as much as possible, because it would be in a lab setting, it wouldn't be an actual testing center, but you could actually emulate that so the student gets that experience.
So if they want to do it at home, they can just purchase that at home?
Yes, they could purchase it at home on their own. So, yes, ma'am, over in the...
How many different versions of a practice test will there be?
Initially, in 2014, there will be 4 versions of the practice test, and then we'll add more to it as we progress. So. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Is it 4 versions per subject or 4 versions?
It'd be 4 complete batteries, 4 per subject. $4 per test content area, $16 per battery. And again, it depending upon if your state makes a statewide purchase or if you work with a publisher, that price may vary. Okay.
How long will the free test be available for?
We're going to leave it on our website at least through the end of the year. And we may leave it up there longer, just so folks can get the experience of working through it. But it's all part of our efforts to support the preparation in the transition. Yes, ma'am.
Are any of those available in Spanish?
Yes, there will be some versions available in Spanish.
But I mean, like for us between now and January?
I'd have to see. I think we will have a version available of the practice test in Spanish. Let me ask that question of our test development team. I know we will have a Spanish version available of the actual test on January 2nd. So there's not that delay that there's been in the past. Whole new group of questions. So y'all say. We're very, very happy to talk about my GED portal. And if you are working with computer-based testing today, you know that we use a website called gedcomputer.com to actually register test takers to complete the demographic form. There's also a place that test takers agree to the Illinois state policies, and if they are underage, they flow into an exception queue that Jennifer and Leanne manage from Springfield to ensure that there is compliance with the compulsory attendance rules in the state. What we're doing in 2014, and we're actually going to begin doing some trainings on this via webinar in October, and this would actually go live in November, is we will roll out my GED portal. And I know a lot of you probably have had some experience working with portal systems before and how they are really designed to have everything in a one hub or one location for the test taker. And so this is a screenshot of the portal. We actually demoed this at our national conference a few weeks ago in Baltimore. Jennifer was there along with the other GED administrators from across the world. And we were able to give a live demo of how this would work for the test taker so that they could actually see how the portal will work. The portal will represent the testing policies for Illinois. When a test taker says that they plan to test in Illinois, they're going to be made aware of how certificates and transcripts are issued, per our work with Jeff and with the regional offices of education. It will also include the requirement that they must take the Constitution test in order to receive the Illinois High School Equivalency Certificate. Test takers will be able to go in, they'll be able to enter their information, they'll be able to sign in with a Facebook account instead of having to create a new user ID. They'll be able to pull up a dashboard that shows how they actually did on their actual test, so they can actually see in real time what their status is. Now, we won't be including the Constitution test requirement because that's handled outside the Pearson VUE environment for testing, but they can see how they did on the actual GED test. They can actually develop a personal study plan, and I know that when they come in to meet with you in adult education, you kind of take this big goal of passing the GED test and you kind of break it down. You could actually work with your students on developing a study plan in the portal that kind of creates some measurable and reasonable goals and a timeline for doing so. They can actually access study tools, and that's just information to help them make some decisions. I know we're starting to see a surge in the amount of distance education that occurs in adult learning, especially for GED preparation. So they can actually access study tools for that, testing tips, finding a testing center, And then supporting what we talked about earlier, college and careers. How do they transition onward after they earn the credential? And so we are actually working to finalize, make sure that we have all of your state policies captured so that we can put this into our portal so that we can actually go live for registration and scheduling for the January 2nd launch of the 2014 test. And so what we will be doing in the next couple of months is we will be sending out links to webinars, that we will actually do webinars, that we will demo this portal, and we will provide training on this portal for GED examiners, adult educators, anybody who is involved in the GED pipeline that would wish to participate to see how the portal will work will be invited to do so. And what we will continue to do is we will work with Jennifer and Leanne to make sure that they know how to access the portal to go in to approve the age exceptions for those candidates who are not at least 18 years of age. And so we've been working with our GEDcomputer.com website. We'll be transitioning to the portal as we get closer to 2014 and we start scheduling the 2014 GED test. Here is another screenshot of the portal, very similar to what students do today, but they actually enter their information when they're ready to test. They select the test content areas. Again, one of the things we've heard repeatedly over the last 20 months is that test takers like the ability to be able to select the test they want to take when they want to take it. And so that whole idea of student choice will continue to, as we progress into 2014. And then they'll be able to put in their address and or zip code and see what centers are nearby them. And so because students, they have other responsibilities, family, jobs, and sometimes more than one job, they need to find a testing time that's convenient for them. And so if it's a public fixed testing site that is open, then they can find a center that works for them. I think College of DuPage has 4 centers in the county. So if they put in the zip code here for Glen Ellen, then it will pull up the centers at the 4 campuses of College of DuPage, and they can figure out which one works best for them. This locator, however, will not show mobile sites. We will continue to utilize mobile sites as necessary to support testing needs, maybe for special populations and corrections, or to serve maybe very rural areas where there is prearranged testing where you serve those by addendum in the past. This locator will not show those because those sites are not visible to the public. Those are prearranged testing times. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so the students that I had this summer that were going to test on computer, they registered through GED Testing, I think it was.
GEDcomputer.com.
And we didn't have my GED portal. But now the students, when this comes up, you would register through here? Is that how you do it?
And the question is, when would they actually go to the portal to register? They will begin using the portal for registration scheduling in 2014. Okay. And when the portal goes live, we will do some webinars to train everybody and let you all know the go live date so that students can begin going in to actually create accounts. So they can create accounts and then be able to schedule tests. They would start here, yes. Yeah. But for now, if they are testing on computer, they would still work. If they're going to take the 2002 series on computer, they'll still work through GEDcomputer.com until the end of the year. Yes, ma'am.
You said that they could register on this also through their Facebook account?
The question is, can they register through their Facebook account? They can actually log in using their Facebook ID, is what they'll be able to do.
Additional security then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there's additional security. The reason why we're doing that is that all of our test takers across all age groups and demographics, most of them have Facebook accounts. And so the Facebook account is simply a log-on, but then when they get into the system, they actually have to enter their personal information, their legal name, their address, which drives in Jeff's system, their ROE of residence for credentialing. They have to enter their date of birth. They just use it as a log-on to get into the system. That way they don't have to remember another user ID or password. It's just a log-on, and then they have to enter their personal demographic information.
If their Facebook accounts get hacked, they
No,
won't be
they're not linked. Yeah, this website, folks, my GED portal is supported through our work with Pearson VUE. And so it adheres to those strict standards. We know that we've got personal information here, including vital information, test scores. All of it is through a double secure, in fact, it's a bunker in Iowa City is where it actually resides. And while they would sign in through a Facebook as a single ID, the records are not linked. You can't go to somebody's Facebook account and then get into the system. The system will not do it. It's just using that ID and password so they can go into this portal, and there'll be a message telling them that they are on a secure site within this system. Very good question, though, but that's one of the things that we get asked the most about is test security and safeguarding that vital information. Yes, ma'am, here in the front.
Should you perhaps not have a Facebook account? I assume you could register without having to go set up a Facebook
Yes,
account.
absolutely. The question is, do you have to have a Facebook account? No, you do not need a Facebook account to do this. It's just another matter of convenience for the test taker. Again, knowing something about our demographic of test takers, it's meant as a matter of convenience, but it's not required.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
That being said, going back to the Facebook login, they'll retain their identical username and password. So if somebody were to get the Facebook information, they could then log in as that person and get their information. So it'd be advisable to tell students to change it once they log in.
I would say yes, but let me talk to my IT people. And these are good questions that would be great to raise in our webinar when we actually do the training, but I will find out and get you an answer to that. But I will tell you that the security protocols are in place and are being taken seriously. Other question? Yes, ma'am.
Can I ask you a question about choosing the language that you take the test in?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I had a student who chose to take one of the tests in Spanish and then in English. Then he wanted to take the other couple in Spanish.
Yes.
And he was told that that was not built into the system, that it was a special accommodation they would accommodate him. Is that correct?
And the question is about choosing different forms of the language, and I'd have to ask Jennifer, you all allow the combination?
Yes.
Yes, so every state varies by whether or not they allow scores to be combined across languages, and Illinois does allow test takers to move back and forth. The answer to your question about choosing the language, it's not an accommodation. When they go into register, they choose the language form they want to test in, whether it be English or Spanish, and then they progress through to test scheduling. So it's not an accommodation. Has he tried to do this recently?
Yes, and he contacted Pearson, I assume.
No.
And they said that they would make an exception for him. And I said I didn't believe it worked that way,
No.
but I would.
No. When he would actually go into the system today, he would actually select the test language first, then select the test content area, then the center, then the date and time he wanted to test. So I'd like to talk to you offline about that, and let's look. Maybe we might need to look at his information and find out what occurred. But yes, your state allows test takers to move between languages, so there shouldn't be anything that kept him from scheduling that test. But thank you for bringing it up, and I'll make sure you get my card so we can talk offline. Other questions? Okay, our score report in 2014. I think for a lot of students and for a lot of teachers, something that has been a source of mild frustration, we'll say, has been that you get the score report at the end, and it has a scale score and has a percentile rank, and it doesn't tell you a lot more than that. So the student comes back with their test results. They made a 390 in math, and all you know is that they missed passing the math subject area by 20 points. You don't know, did they miss it because they couldn't do the computation, they missed it because they struggled in algebra. You don't know what their area of need is. All you know is that they failed. So in 2014, and one of the advantages of computer-based testing is to be able to develop this score report that's going to give a lot greater information that is customized to that test taker based upon their performance. And so some things that are included are areas of demonstrated strengths, and talk about what did the student do well on. I know a lot of adult ed programs, especially larger programs, have people who work as transition counselors, or maybe you have an agreement with the academic advising, career advising office on the college, where they come in and they talk to students about enrollment. And the new score report will have some information that we'll be able to talk about what the strengths were. Again, going back to my days as a developmental educator and working with students, students come in and say, hey, I want to be a nurse or a doctor. You look at their science scores, and their science scores are below what we'd expect of a high school senior. Sometimes they're below what we'd expect of a high school freshman. So then you have to have the tough conversation about, well, what are you really prepared for? And what are your strengths? Let's look at what you did in other areas. So there can be some great conversations with your adult learners about what their strengths are and aligning those to career options and the work with iPathways and other initiatives in your state. This would support that effort so that we put students in the direction of what they're best at doing. Areas for improvement. If they didn't pass a test area, what did they fail? What do they need to focus remediation on? So rather than having to have them come back in, give them another test to determine what their educational function level is, then go pull curriculum, and then start to develop an individualized instructional plan, you can take that score report and say, okay, this is an area of need, this is what we're going to work with you on, and let's put together maybe a 30-hour plan that addresses these areas, and then we will either give you another test to determine your readiness, or we'll give you GED ready, but we will determine after maybe 30 hours, and I'm just pulling out a number, what would be the best course of action. And then customize next steps about specific tactics, and as well as publisher resources to help them, with retesting options or in making the transition to job and post-secondary. So here's an actual copy of the score report, and I want to kind of point out a few of the features to you. Now, I do want to underscore that this is different than the transcript. This is different than the official transcript that will come from your ROE. This is actually something the test taker will get. They will get it through my GED portal, and it'll be available about 3 hours after they complete their testing session. So in today's world, on computer-based testing, they get their unofficial score report instantly unless it's the writing test, and that takes a few days because those are scored by hand. Because everything will be computerized and fully digital, if you will, in 2014, they'll be able to go back and print this within about 3 to 4 hours. They'll get an email telling them that their score report is available on my GED portal. So there'll be their basic information for them, and then it actually tells them what their score was. The scale for the 2014 test will range from about 100 points to about 200 points. And as Jennifer mentioned earlier, the passing score will be 150, and then their score will be noted. So they know if they're above passing, and you can see also on here is that what this tells this student is they are achieving performance level 3, and it gives a description of what that is. And so the student kind of knows how they did. And number one, they passed the subtest, and they kind of know that they've achieved level 3. And then here's a cut score. It looks like it's about 185. This is actually the score for GED with honors to denote career and or college readiness. And these are arbitrary numbers at this point. This is for demonstration purposes. But to give you all an idea of, okay, you got a student well above the passing standard for high school equivalency. You can see that they're approaching GED with honors. And so if you're thinking about transitions to post-secondary education and you're trying to cut down the number of developmental courses a student needs, if they're 5 points from this mark, then a little bit of support, a little bit of remediation, maybe they could come in, work with you for maybe a few weeks, go back and retest. If they could get over this mark and the college recognizes this cut score, this second cut score, they wouldn't be developmental when they go to college. And if we can reduce the number of students or the number of developmental courses they have to take, the more likely we are to retain them, and they would not drop out after their first or second semester. So this is part of the whole idea of embedding those career and college readiness components in 2014. And I see hands going up. So I'm going to stop. I do want to get over here because I got a lot more cool things to share with you, but I want to get these questions. Yes, ma'am.
How closely aligned would those scores be with the compass test? Because where I come from,
Yes.
Once students get to study some.
Okay. The question is, how closely aligned are these scores with Compass test? And I cannot answer that question. I'd have to defer to our test development team. I will tell you that we've consulted with different groups, including ACT's division. So that's actually something that we will research further as we launch the test and we start to do longitudinal research. So right now I can't give you an answer, but I know that we've consulted with them. There's been some base validity work done, but the actual statistical work has not been completed. And we can't actually do that until we actually administer this test to high school, to adult learners. But that is something we will be following up on. Yes, sir, in the back. You were trying to keep these in order, so. The question is hours after the test finished, 3 to 4.
They don't get any printout when they leave the testing center.
No, sir. They won't get a printout when they leave the testing center in 2014, and the reason for that is the extended response item and the short answer items have to be scored, and it will be the artificial intelligence scoring engine that will do that. And that engine has been calibrated through the administration of the items for field testing along with the administration of the items with the high school seniors that recently graduated. So those engines are being developed and calibrated, and just to alleviate any concern, because although we've given this to several thousand people to develop those items, we will still continue to do some things to make sure that there are quality checks in it. So it's not completely devoid of human interaction when necessary. Yes, I cannot remember who was next, so I'm going to let y'all decide.
Other than the students, who else will have access to this information?
Right now, it will be the student who will have access to the information. One of the things that we are working on in 2014 and beyond will be an educator portal whereby you could link your students and say these are students enrolled in your class or program, and with their permission, in accordance with FERPA and et cetera, you would be able to go back and pull this information. But initially, it will only be available from students. One of the things that we're seeking advice from Jennifer and her colleagues on is this is great information for teachers to work with students individually. It's also great information for program directors to say, okay, are we missing a skill or a concept? Do we need to really do some professional development for teachers on teaching, understanding and analyzing arguments in text or something? That's what that says. Then that information could help inform instruction so that there could be an effort to focus on that so that more students are more successful in that skill set. So that will be something we will roll out in the future, is making this available to teachers through our educator portal. How we're going to do that, we are still talking with Jennifer. Jennifer's part of our CBT work group advisory panel that we are consulting with across the country. And so we're going to talk about how could we do that across states. We can do it, we just got to figure out a way to roll it out and make it something that's going to be accessible.
I gave a suggestion at the meeting, so hopefully they said, okay, we'll contact you. So.
Yeah. And actually, I think we're trying to get a meeting with you for the week of the 2nd of September, I think. I know we're trying to get the group back together. We got about 10, we got about 10 Jennifers that we work with across the country that have been champions of computer-based testing and very visionary in terms of rethinking the system for adult learners. And so we took an afternoon of theirs away, and we talked about what we've done and where we're going and what do we need to continue to focus on. So we're going to continue that dialogue. Yes, ma'am, back there. Yes, the question is for the essay, if they fail it, will they get details as to why? And actually here, the score report will tell them what they did well in. And so this one is, this is actually the reasoning through language arts test, which will include some extended response items. It's very similar to the essay as we know it today, but it actually takes, there's actually 3 reporting categories here, and the checks denote that they actually performed in this area. And so if, like this one is missing, and this is analyze and create an argument, and so this actually is an area that they did not do well on. So you actually could look at this and see, okay, this is probably what you need assistance with. And so you'll be able to look at this and look at, did they struggle with grammar? Was it punctuation? Was it spelling? Was it the structure of the response? What was it they didn't do well with? And so you'll be able to help them. I know from the 2002 world, it's very frustrating for things to be off topic and you don't know, that doesn't tell you a lot, but this actually gives you something of substance to work off of. Yes, I think you're next.
So even if someone has technically passed above a 150, they can come back and take it again to try to get a higher score of that college career ready. Is that right?
Yeah, the question is, if they pass the test at above 150, could they retest to earn the GED with honors for career and college readiness? And the answer is yes. We do not have any restrictions on that. We would defer, however, to your state. Ultimately, it would be the state's decision. We don't have anything barring them from retesting to earn a higher score. I know when I was in the State Department of Education in Louisiana, some of my private faith-based colleges required a higher score for homeschool students, and so I often had homeschool students retesting. Although they had earned well above a 450, they were trying to earn a higher score to be admitted to a faith-based college or university. So, and sometimes we've had employers who asked for higher scores to depend upon the type of job somebody was seeking. So we have no policy against that at the testing service. We would ultimately defer to your state office. Yes, sir, James.
David, on the analysis of your performance using the two languages, will that information be available to instructors beforehand so that they can talk about these particular issues when they're working with students? Over time, that will become a familiar process.
Yeah. The question was about the availability of this information to instructors, and the answer is over time, through our educator portal, we will actually be able to make this available to teachers to go in and access. But initially, in 2014, if a student takes the test, they come back to see you, what you'll need to say to them is, where's your score report? Oh, I didn't bring it. Well, let's go to the computer, log into my GED portal, and pull off your score report so we can look at it together. So for now, the responsibility is exclusively on the student, and so this is something you want to talk to them about and go and sit down with them and pull it and say, before we can plan on how we're going to help you prepare for your next test, we need to see and look at this. Yes, ma'am.
If the tester does poorly on the essay portion of the test and does very well on the other part, is it possible they can pass that test? At least at the 150 level, not necessarily the college and career level.
The question is, if they do poorly on the extended response item, could they still pass the overall reasoning through language arts test? I don't really know because of the importance of writing and being able to use source text and develop a strong argument, be able to cite evidence. That's such a skill that's, it's a skill that's so much required today. I don't know that just simply passing the objective part will allow them to pass it. So I would have to defer that question to our test development team. Just knowing what colleges and employers expect, like Jennifer, I wouldn't think that would be the case. But again, I'd have to talk to somebody who actually works these test items and knows how items are weighted.
We were just talking, we think that, that's not how it's done now. So
No, it's not really,
I wouldn't think that it would be something that would be.
No. Yeah, and Jennifer is correct. It's not how it's done today. If you don't pass the essay, you don't pass the writing test. So I don't look for that to change, but the reason why I can't give you an answer as to how things are weighted out is because of you'll have objective type items, you'll have technology enhanced items, you'll have extended response items. So with having all of those types of items, the distribution and the weighted amount of the items will vary. That's a great question, though. I can talk to our test development team and get you a little bit more insight on that. Other questions? Getting close to the end. So. GED Analytics, another tool resource that's coming in 2014 that's actually being beta tested right now by a couple of states that are 100% CBT, computer-based testing. Again, this is not to replace what you're going to get through Turnkey and what Jeff's office does for you all. but this is GED test taker performance that you can look at demographic data by testing center, by jurisdiction, and also do a comparison. And so you can see average years somebody's out of school, average age of test takers. You can actually kind of take the data and kind of look at it from many different vantage points. When I was in the State Department of Education, I used to get questions, how many people under 25 took the GED test, and what was their ethnicity breakdown. So I'd have to go pull a special report. So Jennifer's shaking her head. I think Jennifer gets those types of requests as well. Maybe your college president wants to know how many people are we testing that are 25 to 45 that we could actually recruit into maybe an industry-based training program here on the college or something. So this will be great information that we will make accessible. Jennifer's office will control who actually accesses this system, whether it be the directors of adult education or whether it be the examiners. That'll be her decision. But it's meant to be a reporting tool that helps inform performance, but also informs what areas of need are going forward. You can also take GED Analytics and go into test results. You can look at how many students passed one test, passed two tests, passed three, passed four. And then you can also see what their scores are, or how many have yet to pass an area, and you can actually see what their performance was in certain areas. So if I'll give you an oversimplified example here. Say you have a program, and say that every other test taker, half of them are failing math. Rather than waiting to the end of the year to know this information, this is on-time information. It's a day behind. So whoever tested today would be in the system for Monday. And so if the director of the program wanted to pull a report the first week of every month and see what's happening and kind of look at performance, and if he starts to see performance in math drop off, then what can be done in instruction to help students be more prepared for the math test? You then go back to the score reports and say, okay, these are areas we need to focus on. So again, it works in tandem with the score report at the individual test taker level, but it gives you that composite overview of what's occurring across the program. So again, another cool reporting tool, and we will work with Jennifer's office to determine how we will roll this out, who will actually be able to access this system. So really, really neat. We've had a lot of man hours in developing this system behind the scenes. So the 2014 program, just kind of some summary points here. We have designed this program to be learner-centric. We and I include myself, we are aware of the issues that are out there and the challenges that face teachers of adult education. We're aware of the challenges examiners face. We are aware of the challenges students face. And so when we set out on this great adventure, and Jennifer referenced people being apprehensive about would the testing service be able to pull this off, the whole idea was about redesigning this program to better serve adult learners. And so everything that we're doing, everything that we're discussing, even things that I alluded to that we're considering and working on in the future, are things that we're trying to do to support the adult learner. There are 40 million adults across the U.S. that do not have a high school diploma. They are the future students at your college. And so we need to help them access this program through your GED preparation programs and take the test and move forward. Our aligned transcript with the skills and knowledge that employers expect, that colleges expect, that really give them an indicator of what their career trajectory might look like, is something that we built in. We really want to help adult learners become competitive for these middle school jobs. These middle school jobs will require some college, but not necessarily a 4-year degree. And so with a better GED test, we can tell students what their options are for going into credit-bearing courses at your institution or going into job training programs maybe run by continuing corporate or workforce development, and being able to earn the credentials to get into those jobs. I think we all know of adult learners that could access those jobs if they just had the right information to make some informed decisions. And then finally, trying to do something with the 40 million. There are many, many more that we could serve if we could be more efficient in how we do our jobs. And so the components of this system are being designed with that in mind, that we can get more adults into the preparation program, but more importantly, transition them on to the future. So, I hope you've liked what I had to say, and if you do, I invite you to visit marchwithus.com. There's a flyer in your folder about this. And I want to tell you about the March With Us initiative for just a moment. We got a letter about 3 or 4 months ago from a GED graduate from the 70s who lives in Florida. Her name is Leanne Scott. And there have been people who have questioned the ability of adults to take the test on computer. They've questioned the efforts by the testing service. They've just, a lot of things, how's all this going to work? And, do you really think you could pull this off? And why would you even do it? I mean, we've heard it. And, she was reading an article where people were in opposition to these changes. And, she said, I am a GED graduate. I earned my credential in the 70s. But when I earned my credential in the 70s, I still had to fight the system to be successful in life. I was able to go on to community college, and I was very successful. I earned above a 3.5. And I decided to go on to a senior institution, a university, and earn my baccalaureate degree. But the dean decided, because I had a GED credential, that I was not prepared to be at the university, although I had earned an associate degree well above a 3.5. So the dean put her on probation going into her junior coursework. So she fought that, and she won, and she proved the dean wrong, which I love, that she made him eat his words. So then went on, and she realized that there were things that she had to go and research, because her high school, her counterparts her peers rather, who had gone through a traditional diploma program, knew things and knew references to things that were discussed in class that she didn't hear, because those skills were not emphasized on the GED test. So she was at a disadvantage and had to go do some research to come back and be able to understand what the professor was referencing whenever he would make a comment about something. And I'm seeing a lot of nods of agreement in the room. I think you all understand where I'm going with this. She also talked about the importance of digital literacy and the way that technology is so integrated into everything we do, and how there is no longer an actual physical card catalog. To research at the library, you have to actually go and do searches on the computer. And so Leanne said, I appreciate what you're doing. I was able to work hard. I was able to fight my own battles, if you will. I was able to overcome those who tried to hold me back because I had a GED credential. And so her perspective is that these changes are necessary because, despite the fact that the GED testing program and the certificate she earned in Florida, despite the fact that it gave her the opportunity, she still had to fight to get to where she wanted to become, to get in life, to earn a graduate degree, to be an educator, to be a social work caseworker, to be a small business owner. And those are the different jobs she's held in her life. Anyway, I'm not really doing her story justice, but we all know Leanne in our lives. We all know that adult learner who has persevered despite the challenges and barriers that they might face. So I encourage you to go to marchwithus.com, read Leanne's story. Think about a Leanne in your community who, despite the odds being against them, has been a success and has been an example for others to follow. And if you like, sign up to March With Us and learn more about the new test. But more importantly, give us feedback about what we can be doing to help your adult learners. We've come out with some things that have been response to requests that we've heard over time at the testing service, but what else could we be doing? Because this is only the beginning of creating that new learner-centric program for adults. In closing, very quickly, the adult learners depend on the coordination between testing and instruction, and one of the things that we've been able to realize, especially here at College of DuPage, is that there is still that coordination of services. Jared has told me about responses from teachers, and we've talked about that. I've talked to Dan a few times over the phone, so we've been able to kind of keep that connection. We want to continue that relationship. We know that adult learners, they need access to college classes, credit-bearing courses specifically, workforce training programs, but more importantly, they want to earn a family-sustaining wage. And we are the ones who, if you will, we hold the keys to those dreams of tomorrow for them. So we've got to make sure that they have the opportunity to go forward. And again, I'm going to say it again, those millions of middle skill jobs, especially in a state like Illinois, where that's where the infrastructure is going with the changes your state's making, that's where things are going. That's where your work with pathways comes in. We have to get adults where they can be competitive for those jobs, because right now we don't produce enough graduates. Definitely explore delivering the GED test. I think most of you are GED testing centers on computer. If you're one of those that's in the beginning phases that hasn't moved forward, please be talking with Leanne, be talking with Patty on my team at the testing service so we can actually help you all get up and running before the end of the year. Be talking about the testing needs at your college. Jarrett's a great example of that. Not a great need for paper, offer more computer. Make sure you kind of keep an eye on that. Make sure that adult learners do not have to wait to take the test, because we still get those calls at the testing service when there's a waiting list. That's one of the problems that we want to resolve with this, is by going to computer-based testing. And then most importantly, I know we had some folks in the room who were from student affairs, maybe enrollment management earlier, but talk about the new testing program with your colleagues across the campus, whether you be here at DuPage or somewhere else. Make sure people know what this new test will be standing for, so that they are aware that the GED graduate of tomorrow will look remarkably different from the one of today. Finally, urge your state to adopt a high school equivalency test that is strongly aligned to the college and career readiness standards for adult education. And there's actually some information in your folder about that, and there's more information on our website. Illinois is in sync with this, with their efforts for standard-based instruction, with the technology skills, and so is the GED test. And so what you have been doing on the instructional side with professional development, with revising and developing your state standards, we are certainly in line with where your state's going, and this all supports economic development, workforce development, and the better life for the adult learner. Become familiar with GED Ready and the score report, be able to talk about it, interpret it, and know what it means. And finally, visit gedtestingservice.com to learn more and to sign up for updates, because we're all the time sending out new information to the field. Jennifer talked earlier about finishtheged.com. That's our closeout campaign for the 2002 series. There's a countdown clock. If you go to it at this moment, it will tell you the number of months, days, hours, and minutes to the end of the 2002 test series. And here's my information. And I will, if we've got time, I'll entertain any questions. Not too much time. Okay, Jarrett says you can
continue the questions as we go forward. Yeah. We have 2 questions. We're probably limited at that. Okay, perfect.
Okay.
David, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure having you.
Thank you.